Hi, we're here. I'm back for another Real Talk with Real Parents. My name is Vanessa Callaghan. I'm a parent empowerment coach with Raising Our Resilience. And I'm here to really open it up to ask me anything. And you'll notice that there are a wide range of topics that folks are interested in when they land here in Raising Our Resilience, all having to do with building your own resilience and your child's resilience, your children, your whole family's resilience, in order to be able to, weather the storms ahead. And boy, have we been hit with a storm this year. Some people would call it a something show, not just a storm. But I'm here for you. I'm here because I know from helping hundreds of families over almost 2 decades of mentorship, mentoring interns and teachers and consulting in different schools, giving talks as far as, Denver, San Diego, Oakland, Emeryville, Berkeley, all the way to China and Bulgaria. What I've seen is that we all want similar things for our children. Whether you're a preschool teacher in Sofia, Bulgaria, or if you are an administrator in Oakland for a school, or you are a parent of 4 children under the age of 10. Or if you're raising teenagers trying to figure out how to navigate into this, in this COVID time, virtual learning and sibling rivalry and prepping for college. All parents seem to want the same things everywhere. And that is for our children to feel well equipped for life and have our relationships be still intact with them. So this edition of sort of Real Talk with Real Parents, Ask Me Anything, is to address some of the questions that you've been raising as you've been joining the Raising Our Resilience parent group. There's a reason why this is not broadcasting outside of the group. This is really just for us here, and also for my private email list of folks that I have had personal contact with, whether it's through a school or through a conference or through a workshop. And we're going to get real here, starting off with Norma Ramos-Ott. She had a question about lying, and she's got a 15-year-old, and it sounds like there's some disregard for boundaries. So I will always be leaning on my framework, my 7-pillar framework, and one of the pillars, Norma, you've touched on right here, are healthy boundaries, which is really sort of the foundation for building a healthy relationship, not only with the world and others, but also with yourself, right? And so first of all, lying is a really tough one because oftentimes it puts us into a position of sort of trying to catch our kids in their dishonesty and call them out on it and really call them in to a conversation about lies. So I would say that, Norma, if you are clear, there's clear evidence that a lie is happening, and there's no ambiguity there. So you're not sort of in this like suspicion mode, but you're actually convinced, like, yeah, there's definitely been a lie, there's evidence, you can back it up. It's really good to enter into a restorative conversation with your child and think about what it would be to create some safety around talking about, first of all, why he felt the need to lie in order to be able to do what he wanted to do. First of all, also in teenage years, lying is really common. It's a way that young people are trying to figure out how power works in the family dynamic and what kind of personal power they have, what power they have over the group. And a lot of times lying is an assertion for independence that isn't always coming in the best form. So I would encourage you, Norma, to start looking at like where does your child have power? Where does your child not have power? And where could your child have some more power? Now, power is interesting because with power comes great responsibility. We've always talked about that, right? Freedom comes responsibility and the power to be able to influence things. So you might want to do like an inventory and go like have a good overhaul of sort of like what does your child have control over? What doesn't your child have control over, and why? Because when I say like a tune-up, we often are 6 months to 2 years behind our child's developmental readiness. I'll say that again. As adults, we often underestimate kids' developmental readiness by 6 months to 2 years. And so we have it figured out for their age 2 years ago, 6 months ago, but not who they are now. And that's why part of what I recommend and what I help my clients do is establish family meetings, so you have this rapport of like checking in and learning and discovering where they are now, so you can meet them there. And things can evolve, right? So like, for example, what chores they're responsible for can evolve. What their allowances can evolve. What their curfew is, what their lights out time is, can evolve, especially between the years of 12 and 18. It's a tremendously moving target and a lot of negotiation, but what a great opportunity for them to build those kinds of critical thinking skills and collaborative skills of sort of bringing their ideas to the table and coming out of the conversation with some kind of agreement. So Norma, I would love to follow up with you about ideas on establishing family meetings and just generally creating a culture of collaboration in your family. Let me know if that was helpful. Let me know in the comments. Christy Weingard, I've got you here down for entitlement. You was concerned that you had. So entitlement is, I've actually given workshops just on the subject, having been a gratitude researcher. Entitlement is the belief that you deserve something, whether or not you have earned it. Yeah. And of course, this is confusing for children because we, as their care providers, provide them care and meet their basic needs without them necessarily having awareness or effort involved in where these supplies and resources are procured from. And so they will naturally, or like kind of logically, come into a state of entitlement towards certain resources. And so it's up to us, and I think of parents and teachers and adults as mentors as much as we are parents, as much as we are teachers. We are mentors, and so we're really orienting children towards life. And with their limited life experience, we're often filling in the gaps. So one of my favorite ways to really help with entitlement is to become really clear about what our children are aware of and what they're not aware of, and closing that gap. So one of the things we just did in the Motivation Mastery weekend, actually, with clients and a few guests, is we did an exercise where we helped to sort of picture and visualize the network of support that surrounds our children, and noticing which of those relationships and which of those people or actors or even elements of nature that kids aren't necessarily connecting the dots are benefiting them. So for example, where did this burrito come from with its 10 ingredients? And imagining through, playing the where did this come from game, how did this get here game, I like to call it, where it's like having to think all the way back to the rice farmer and the sun and the soil and the water that helped this rice to be grown and created, all the way to the dinner plate, which includes all the people, the farmer, the grocer, possibly the person who designed the packaging and got the patent for it. I mean, all the way down to the person who actually took the time to cook the food and make sure it got onto the table, and the person who paid for that. And if you do it with just one or two things each meal, or once a week at a family meeting, it could be this little thought exercise you do. You could even do it with like, oh, look at this pencil holder thing. Where did this come from? And thinking it all the way back to where its origins were is one way to sort of highlight, where things come from, and without shooting on our children. Like, you should be grateful that you have this because not other people don't have this, which it makes some sense. Like, sure, a little healthy dose of guilt every now and then, maybe. But what we found as researchers, as gratitude researchers, we found that authentic gratitude is what really lasts because it's genuine and it comes from within rather than sort of being, shoulded from the outside. And gratitude is an emotion, and we don't normally tell our children they should feel a certain way. Very often we're not like, you should be sad, you should be happy, but we tend to should gratitude quite a bit. So instead, telling them stories that inspire them about where things come from and what good people are in their lives doing good things for them that they get to benefit from is a beautiful place to start. So I've got you for you, Christy. Hannah Kirk said, intensive time with them that competes with adults in the other household. Yeah, I've been working with clients on this one quite a bit recently, you know, really trying to get a handle on how do we do this? Like, we're spending 24/7 with our kids, and yet somehow we're supposed to be keeping like our household going, our 24/7 work going, our personal lives going, and on top of it, now we have a lot of virtual kids learning virtually, and we're having to organize homeschooling, at least partially, right? So how do we have intensive time with them, and actually balance that with like having some time with other adults, right? And I hope I understand your question, Hannah. You can comment in here, let me know if there's more, because I can respond in the comments after this. So one of the things that kids have to get used to is that, you know, we can't have the same level of intensity all day long that we used to have when we would have the mornings and evenings and weekends with them, for those of us who are working or the children are away at school. Like, we're just not endlessly available to that intensity. And so what I encourage my clients to do, and what I've coached several people even here in the Facebook group to do, is to do something called co-working time. Let me see if I can pull something up to share about that. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here. This is just a little guide that, you know, if you're interested, let me know in the comments. Send it to me, please. So finding activities that anchor your child besides screen time. And so here's just a place to start. Like, and the idea is to create the co-working time. In other words, you're going to do your work, I'm going to do my work, or I'm going to be with my, you know, having an adult conversation, having a parent meeting with my co-parent or caregiver, and put some attention on that while you're going to settle into something of your own. Kids aren't used to that with their adults at home. We're really having to retrain them about this, that there are going to be these blocks of time. So asking the question, what are my kids naturally interested in, and listing some high interest activities. These are things that are going to be easy wins, that because they already like to be really engrossed in it and self-directed and really independent and self-sufficient. So maybe helping take a high interest activity and think of another project to do that's really similar, or maybe setting them up with that activity before you head off and have your time with the other adults. And getting really good at turning your kid away when you need to, and coming up with language around that, which is, you know, you can even have a little hand signal of like, we're not, you know, we're separate right now. And then looking around the house to see if there are any activities that you can dust off and bring it back into rotation. Novelty is really helpful. The younger the kids, the more likely this is going to be helpful, that you put 3 things away and take 3 things out. That's really a nice piece. And then also, you know, actually setting aside a time each day or several times a day where everybody is anchoring into their own projects and activities with a little interruption. And you make an interruption rule for urgent things during that time. You know, establishing an interruption rule of like, this is how we get each other's attention when we're co-working. Otherwise, we really are giving each other some room and some space, right? And so it can be, another thing that can be really helpful to establish is an earlier bedtime than you used to have. I have a parent in my life who has a 7-year-old daughter, now 8, and when she was 7, he was posting all over Facebook being like, my life is different now because I used to put my child, you know, to bed around 8:30 and she'd be asleep by 9. Now we start at 7:30. I got blackout curtains. I play some quiet music, and she falls asleep by 8. And suddenly I have this hour back of my life where I get to get on the phone with a friend, or catch up on my emails, or get some housework done, or relax before it's already heading into my bedtime hour or hours. So another thing to consider. If you have follow-up questions, let me know. Also, when I hear the word competition, it makes me wonder about boundaries and how boundaries are going. So Hannah, I would recommend, you know, getting in touch with me. And there's a way that you can do that. I'll share at the end. I recommend you getting in touch with me, and maybe we can explore like what it would look like to make those boundaries, those sort of limits, just a little bit more palatable to your child and more like successful, so that when you are needing some space and you're wanting to kind of ratchet down that competition, you feel like you know what to say and what to do, and your child responds really well to it. Okay, and then I have Amandine Arlette. Hope I said your name right. Let me know if I didn't, and I'll do it. I'll do better next time, please. She says, remembering that what may seem like a small issue to me could feel really large for them, and not making them feel wrong. Well, this is, I love this, Emma Dean, because it's just such a good reminder. And I go back to the idea of really understanding the developmental readiness and developmental levels of our children. And there was somebody else who was really interested in that. I'll pull up their name too. Just really wanting to understand like what they're ready for. You know, I think it was Kay. Yeah, it was Kay. I'll put her name in here too. So yeah, and it can be tricky to do that if you haven't spent a lot of time with children at this age group. You know, folks like me and other educators, or you know, folks who've been around a lot of children a lot of their lives, can kind of get a sense of like what different kids are learning at different times, and also like the range within that, because not every 3-year-old is learning the same thing. And that's why like potty training can be like an 18-month to 2-year sort of span of time that different families land into like consistent potty training, right? And from my Montessori background and my child development background, like I really do believe in like developmental education and all the adults like orienting towards what kids are ready for. We just talked about this in the Motivation Mastery Weekend. Actually, we had this piece about autonomy, and we were really talking about, and competence. We were really talking about in the competence piece, especially as a motivation boost, which we talked about like maybe 3 videos ago, or 2, is really like scaffolding for what they're ready for. And so the best thing you can do is get to know where your child is right now, and then your brain will leap, because you can't help it, to like 5 steps ahead. You just will. You're like, okay, my child is kicking and hitting and yelling when they get upset. I would like them to be nice and use a quiet voice and ask a polite question. Well, that's a huge leap. That's like 5 steps, right? So if you can break it down into smaller steps, develop and move them to what they're developmentally next ready for. What we learned is the zone of proximal development in the Motivation Mastery Weekend. If you can help scaffold it, in other words, help them step it out, so that instead of expecting them to leap all the way over here, like now be nice, say something nice, when they're yelling and kicking and hitting, it's like, okay, let's just work on no kicking and hitting. And like yelling is going to be okay for now. I call it the yellow zone. It's not a red zone behavior. It's a yellow zone behavior. It's okay for now. It's not green, but it's okay for now. And let's work on just moving towards that step. Then when we get to like, okay, there's screaming and hard words happening, but no more hitting and kicking, then we can move towards maybe using a quieter voice, right? Going and cooling down, and then come back before, you know, when the yelling happens. And then when you get the quieter voice, you can move into perhaps like what language to use to actually speak what you need, rather than saying, you're a bad mom and I hate you, or whatever is coming out, right? And saying like, you know, like getting them to the place where like, I'm angry when you don't let me have the yogurt I want, because I really like that yogurt, you know, which is what we're trying to get them to jump to, from hitting, screaming, kicking, yelling, right? And saying, blaming it on the adult to that place. But if we need to break it down into steps. So that's one little piece for you. And Amandina, just love what you said, because again, it's like being aware. Like I have a coach in my world, Amani Aisha. I'm going to give her a little shout out right here. She's one of the expert panelists, one of the coaches, and did a great segment during the Motivation Mastery Weekend on marriage and partnership. She's an excellent marriage coach, by the way. And she said with her little daughter, she reminds herself that she's a tiny human. She's a tiny human. I like to add on, with limited life experience. With limited life experience. Yeah, a tiny human with limited life experience. So what might feel like a big deal to them is a big deal, because they don't really have a whole lot to compare it with. They're still understanding what it's like to have emotions. Their brain is still developing around how to regulate emotions and make decisions, right? So keeping those things in mind is incredibly compassionate and very successful in creating really really positive and healthy relationships with their kids too, and modeling that for them. Looks like Sherry's here. Hi, Sherry. Say hello. Where are you tuning in from? Sherry, I've got you queued up here too. You're right after Arlene. So Arlene says she wants help about planning the day. I hear you, Arlene. Like this is one of the big ones, especially right now with so much up in the air. And what I can tell you is that there's a reason why robust routines is my middle pillar of my 7 pillars, right in the center of the house, holding the house up. Because without having a sense of rhythm, children do get more dysregulated and have a harder time. It's just what I've seen over and over again, and it's just so true. And so I have a lot to say about this. I have whole trainings, like I spend a whole month on routines twice a year with my clients and my private clients. It's something we revisit all the time. But what I can tell you, the short version right now. Oh, Sherry's visiting from outside of Sequoia National Park, just in from California. Hi, good to have you here. Um, so for planning the day and routines, one starting point is to get the biorhythm. Anything that has to do with metabolism, metabolic processing, get that rhythm down first. Like make that your top priority. Wake up time, sleep time, and the meals and snacks in between, and getting that as regular as possible. Number 1. Number 2, build in transitions like you never thought you needed. So if you have like at 2, we're going to do this, and 3, we're going to do that, and 4, we're going to do that. From 2 to 2:45, we're going to do this. From 2:45 to 3, we're going to transition. From 3 to 3:45, we're going to do this thing. From 3:45 to 4, we're going to transition. The younger they are, the larger the amount of time that you want to build in there, because suddenly they need to potty. And then the potty, they accidentally pee on the pants. And they pee on the pants, and you got to change the pants, right? 10 minutes go by. You never know, right? You get some resistance, and you have a full-blown tantrum for 10 full minutes, and you have to work through that emotionally with them before you drag them into the car to go off for your afternoon activity, right? So you're going to want to build in transitions. So biorhythms, transitions, and then last but not least, getting really real about how long things take, like transitions, but all things, and getting a chance to like preview that with the kids of like what the schedule is. And there's more. And if this is for you, if you really want more about routines, let me know in the comments and what we should connect, okay? So it's one of my main pillars and trainings. So Sherry, it's your turn. So you had said getting on the same page as my partner on how to parent. This is the big, like I always say, they're all the big one, I swear. But I mean, this is why this is one of the 7 pillars as well. It's a big deal. So the way that I put it is like mutual goals and teamwork. And really the result of that, of having mutual goals where you really figure out where your shared values align, and then having teamwork towards your mutual goals, is really going to set things to like a more peaceful, harmonious tone where you're able to work towards things together. And it can take a series of conversations, like intensively at first, which is what I do with several of my clients. Who feel like they're at odds, not on the same page. They're kind of undermining each other in the moment and feeling awkward about it, feeling frustrated, feeling not heard and seen, like all the things. And I don't know what it looks like for you, Sherry. I'm not assuming, but these are common. If I see that, it's like, okay, y'all, we need to do some work and figure out what your shared values are in terms of like, even just what your limits would be about how mealtime goes. Like who helps to prepare, who helps to clean up. Do we expect everyone to chew with their mouth closed? Why? What kinds of conversations do you want to have at dinner? Like we could just take dinner, like meal times, and really discover a lot there about like how on the same page you are and how not on the same page you are. And go from there as a template to all these other things, like how are we going to handle screen time? Are we using rewards and punishments? Are we are we setting limits on, like social time, or are we both on the same page about forming a little social pod, or how is that going to look, right? All those conversations. So I really recommend that you start to have them, and if you need it, have someone facilitate them for you, right? Even if it's just for like a 6-month coaching program, which I have for private coaching clients, which I have 1 spot open right now in my practice, opening up in, I think it's September. So we would probably get ready for it in August, and then we could get you started in September. And then I have several more opening up in October and November. Whether it's facilitated with me or someone like me or not, that's fine. but wanting to like drill down to the essential questions and asking them. So if you need more on this, Sherry, follow up with me, okay? And we'll explore what it might be like to get you some of those resources, please. I'd love to support you. And so one of the key questions you can ask is, what do we want our children to learn right now? Like, what's our first top priority goal of what they're going to learn, and let that guide you. That's my like quick version, Sherry. Okay, hopefully that helps. And again, let's talk more. There's more, so much more there. Kathy Garner has a fear that they'll grow up without the kind of skills and qualities that will help them thrive spiritually and by being brilliant at their thing in life. Yeah, you're welcome, Sherry, no problem. So this is a big one. Okay, so fear is definitely something that every parent feels. And if you're listening to this, just write "I hear you" in the comments, just to give some love to this parent, to Kathy, about this fear, right? This fear of growing up without the kinds of skills and qualities that will help them thrive. And I noticed that you mentioned spiritually, Kathy, and I'm wondering if you mean like that sense. And I mean, spiritually means a lot of things to a lot of people, but just sort of that sense of like there's purpose and meaning in life, that we are interconnected in like to maybe a divine sort of whole, and that like we can contribute meaningfully during our time on the planet and have like really great connections and relationships that have that sort of like spiritual or emotional fulfillment, I'm guessing. And so what do you think is getting in their way the most right now, Kathy? That's what I would love to hear, because then we can start there. What are you noticing getting in the way for your kids the most these days? Is it having influences that you don't resonate with, that doesn't align with your family values? Is it maybe the way that communication is going in the household? It doesn't seem to really reflect that feeling of like that spiritual thriving. Is it like you feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to raise my kids so differently than I was raised? Tell me more, because I want to hear like more details. And if you want to personal message me, no problem. But I would love to hear more and help you kind of like where you're at, because it's such a big question. What I can tell you is that from my experience, if you give to kids, and I have this, right, the 7 pillars here, and I can put it up on the screen. If you give kids all 7 pillars, at least to some degree, and kind of build your like family house on all 7, that's when kids have really great outcomes. This is based on the research I've done and based on reading hundreds of studies. I mean, more than that. Emotional mastery, motivation mastery, healthy boundaries, robust routines, being able to discover your shared values and goals and create a sense of teamwork, really being able to have skills in conflict resolution, and last but not least, a lot of skills in developing positive relationships, positive, healthy relationships. When you have all 7 of these in place and going, kind of running in your household, and there will be seasons for some and more than others, but if you have this skill set yourself and in your household, and you're able to impart those tools to your kids, they will have the ingredients that they get to decide how they make their lives, right? They'll have the full, the cupboards will be full for them to play with. The refrigerator will have so many different options for them to throw together that life salad. You know what I'm saying? I'm picking up when I'm laying down here. So, and I love that idea, right? That they have this foundation of tools that they can pull out, like, oh, I am having conflict with my roommate in college. I'm going to pull up my conflict resolution tool and skill. Oh, I'm forming a partnership for the first time in business or in romance and life and household. We better have a talk about our shared values. I've got that tool, right? I know how to do that. I've had that conversation with my family. So a lot of times what we're looking for is to bring the tools into the household and actually role model them and use them with the kids, and they'll pick them up. We can also teach it to them directly as well. All right, I have, let's see, 5 more to go. So Andrea, these are such great questions, by the way. I'm just so impressed with all of you. And it's just like, it just warms my heart to know there are so many caring, brave, smart parents that are a part of this community. Don't you think so? Maybe if you see someone's comment here that you can relate to, you could just give them a little love, a little reply, or a little like, just letting them know, yeah, same here. I'm wondering about this too. And even writing some notes in the comments about what you're learning from this can be really helpful as we kind of figure out how to integrate new information together. I'm an educator first, can you tell? Educator first, parent coach second. So Andrea, I think is her name. Let me know if I pronounced it correctly. She's talking about really wanting to focus on the self-transformation that parenting takes. And this is really connected to what I was just sharing about with Kathy's comment, where like the more we develop ourselves, the more likely we are going to help develop our children. I learned this the hard way and thankfully, when I became an educator, because when I came into a preschool with a nervous system that didn't know how to regulate around screaming children who were biting and kicking and hitting, it was like a fast track experience for me to figure out how to create calm. And that's part of why I can teach about calm, is because I had to find a way to cultivate my calm in a situation that, I'm not saying it's more intense than yours at home, but it was pretty intense, right? Like 24 young children all around me, moving their bodies, doing what kids do, getting into the tussles that they do, and having their lids flipping left and right, and all the things. And I was stressed out and sweaty for months until I cultivated my calming strategies, and I was able to really get a handle on that, and it made me grow. Patience, self-regulation, self-awareness, clearer language, clearer boundaries. My gosh, there's just so much, right? And discovering like, what do I care about? Like, what are my values and why? When we need to impart values, we start to become, it kind of forces us to get clear. And so I think that parenting and or raising kids in any capacity as an educator or parent or caregiver or auntie or uncle is a deeply transformative experience if you allow it to be, and you kind of lean into the potential, because there's such a pure love that's happening that's so motivating, right? Like, you care so much about the outcome of this child in your life. It really does inspire you to do something differently. Put in the comments right now, what is something that you do differently because children are in your world? For me, it would be, I don't react strongly the way that I used to. I had kind of a quick temper, right? And I've been told, Vanessa, you're so calm. And I was like, I wasn't always, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of interactions with kids where I really needed to be the calm one in the room and not react, and instead respond thoughtfully. That changed my whole nervous system and really helped me grow as a human, as a person. So Andrea, I just love it. Yours, Angie Doyle says, remaining patient while navigating through homeschooling my kids. Okay, so this is really getting to the heart of what is coming up in trainings here in our group, because what I'm hearing is the number one stressor. And I'm going to be dropping a poll as well, like let me know what's your top concern, is this homeschooling piece. And a lot of you were thrown into it in the spring, and it was at least semi-traumatic, if not fully traumatic, to suddenly have the kids at home responsible for their teaching, for teaching them, for guiding them, for providing childcare for them, and for many of us continuing working. It was like an untenable situation that was really hard on everybody. And then on top of it, we're all missing like our regular community connections and events. The kids are missing their friends. Like, it was hard. And it's still, and I'm not saying it is easier now, but we kind of went through that wave of like, WTF, what's happening, right? And so now we get to go into the fall, many of us knowing now that we have to, are either choosing or have to do virtual learning, distance learning in the fall. We're really asking bigger, like more sophisticated questions, whereas I think in the spring, it was more about survival. Like, how do I get through the next 3 months? And how do I help my kid have the best possible experience while all this stress is happening, all this, pandemic stress. And now we get to be a little more deliberate about it, which is interesting, because on the one hand, that's great, because like we get to have a sense of more choice. We could ask questions of like, how could I make home learning more interesting or sustainable? What kind of routine is really going to serve my kid? what kinds of rules and boundaries should I have, like around how we use devices, you know, all these really good questions and concerns are coming up, and we're able to actually have a little bit of space to think it through. Although many of us are exhausted, I understand, but there's a little silver lining here, right? We can be a little more prepared heading into our learning months. Some of us as soon as like 2 weeks from now. But on the other hand, because we have that sense of like, I have time to plan this out a bit more, there's also more pressure. There's more pressure on parents to like make the right decision and do the right thing and get it all ready and perfect for when school starts. So what I would just say to everybody is focus on one thing at a time, and you will build a positive experience for your kids, even if it's just one step or one resource or one problem solved at a time. I believe in you, and I believe in our community and your communities of support to help you carry this, to pull this off. I really do. And the groundswell of support for parents right now, like me coming and doing these talks regularly, I'll be here every Monday, specifically addressing the virtual learning piece, the being home with kids piece through the lens of the 7 pillars, but also from all of my experience of homeschooling children and even virtually. Like I have several students now even. I will be giving you that. And what I know to be true is that one step at a time, you can get there. You absolutely can. Take a breath into that. Also, there is no perfect way to do this. We're in a pandemic. So we're gonna make the best choice we can as we go. And I would invite you to be adaptable and to consider revisiting your plan of attack, like your plan of success for your kids in terms of virtual learning, either weekly or at the minimum every 2 weeks. And just really check in. How is this going? You know, is this platform the one that is going to be working? Should I continue with this, you know, these lessons this way? Should we revamp the schedule? Are there new limits or boundaries that we need to talk about? And allow it to be an evolving beast. I'm going to call it a beast, an evolving beast. And those regular check-ins, I can't emphasize enough. It really makes a difference. So I would just put on your schedule right now, whoever your other thought partners are, whether they're co-parents or teachers, or if they are even your older children, to put a family meeting or a kind of team meeting on the calendar at minimum every 2 weeks. It's the same interval that I meet with my private clients. I say every 2 weeks at a minimum is about, every 2 weeks is about right. Once a month is too infrequent. Every week is a little overkill unless it's just a check-in. Although you can easily meet with your own children weekly, absolutely. But I'm talking about wanting to revamp anything, every 2 weeks is a really good interval. So that's my top advice at this moment, is just schedule that in, knowing that so that you know that you don't have to have it all figured out now, and you'll have that built in, okay? And for it to evolve. Now, Heidi, staying calm in constant conflicts. I just gave a 6-day training on 6 calm parent strategies, and let me just double check. You shared your email with me, which means that I sent you the 6 strategies to your inbox, as well as everybody else who shared their email. Now, if you have not yet gotten that guide, or you lost it or forgot about it, or whenever you need it back into your inbox, you can absolutely get it again. No problem. I have a landing page just for that. So you can just go ahead and throw your email into this, into the form, and it will kick it to you so that you can have it, okay? And the 6 strategies, the reason I have it built this way is because more than 6 is too hard to remember. Less than 6, you don't have something for everyone, right? And the idea here is to pick 1 or 2 or 3 that you are going to bring into rotation and really commit to. Whether it's the somatic tools of like breath and squeeze and release, or if it's the mindset tools more of like, reframing things and going kind of emotion coaching kids instead of arguing with their emotions or telling them to handle it on their own. There's different ways that you can approach this. And again, this is one of those things that it's one of my pillars, emotional mastery. And there's a reason why it's number 1. I mean, it could be number 1, it could be number 7, because it's sort of a result as well. But I really feel that when we know how to navigate those tough moments while staying calm, it's it's a game changer. It really is. And there are quite a few steps involved, and they're different for every person. So I would recommend, Heidi, just kind of getting in touch with me, and maybe we can discover what yours is, okay? What your way forward is there. In the meantime, grab those six tools and get started on them. Okay, that's my advice to you. Stacy, there's a question about boredom at home and being apart from friends. Yeah, tough. This is hard right now, and kids are having to, especially young ones who aren't really used to socializing virtually. It's not a natural transition for a lot of them. So parents have had to get creative. And of course, I have conversations with hundreds of families, since COVID became a global pandemic. And a couple of smart things that parents have done. First of all, getting their kids really comfortable masks that they're really used to wearing. Befriending neighbors that are within your block, and just like I actually went around and knocked on the doors on this block and just said, hi, I'm your neighbor. We're all stuck at home. I wanted to introduce myself. I exchanged numbers with a few people just so we could be there for each other in terms of like safety or community. So maybe possibly get to know a neighbor kid have your child meet another family and see if there's any way that they could play some like through the fence kind of games. Where maybe they go scootering around the park together while you and the parents stand 10 feet apart or as far as you need to feel comfortable to be able, with masks on, for them to be able to socialize within your neighborhood. Because I know it can be hard to schedule play dates outside of the neighborhood right now because we're really not supposed to be moving around that much. The other thing is introducing them to other ways of socializing. Now, of course, the Zoom and the FaceTime and things we're aware of it, but not everybody's aware that you can like actually play a game through Zoom, and you can play a game through FaceTime. Things like you can go on scavenger hunts in your own houses and then bring all the things back and do a show and tell. And that could be a full 30-minute social exchange. I did it with a group of parents. You could do it with your kid and a kid who's in another house. Look it up, like be proactive, right? Like games to play on Zoom with kids. And there's a bunch of ideas that will pop up. But scavenger hunt one is a really successful one. Another thing is consider like creating, starting pen pals and other things that we used to do before. Like imagine being in a rural town and there's not a lot of other kids. Like how would you get creative to help them have more social connection? The other thing about boredom at home is that a lot of times kids aren't oriented to their physical environment the same way as they would be if they were living in it all the time. But since they go to school and that's where like all the action is, sometimes home is like the place you just recover and rest. And so you might revitalize a corner in your house by putting a bunch of recycling and a bunch of tape and a bunch of, materials that they could create something out of it. You might dig a hole in your yard and play around with like water and mud cakes and, it's something new, something different in your environment that helps them to reorient to it as an interactive space that they can have some influence over. I had one family repaint their whole house one room at a time and have the kids help, just to have something that they could be doing together. That was a project that was also good for the house, but more importantly, like something to do, right? That was meaningful. Like I got to paint this wall yellow, and it was really exciting for the young ones. There's a lot more to say on that as well, and we'll be covering more of it over the next 6-7 weeks here. Christine, you're the final one. So Christine is saying being constantly together and all their free time is spent on screens, their behavior is markedly different post screens and not in a good way. You're not the only one to see this, by the way, Christine. Like I've had now at least a dozen sessions with clients over the last 2-3 weeks where folks are saying, I've noticed that my kid is cranky when they have too much screen time. And it's because we're not really physiologically built, especially young people, we're not physiologically built for that much sedentary time. Even adults aren't, right? But we've kind of like created this lifestyle for many of us. But, getting outside is an antidote for a lot of this kind of screen fatigue. And it can help kids to reinvigorate their relationship with activities that happen away from screens. So not everybody has access to an outdoor space in their own little property, right? Like whether you have a balcony or if you have a courtyard or if you have an actual yard or if you have a neighborhood park. But finding something, like I saw these kids in this really dense urban area went out to the middle of a parking lot and flew kites the other day. And I just thought, and like, it was an hour of entertainment, right? Like watching that kite, like dip and soar and fly and, crashing it and then launching it again. And so kind of reviving like these, pre-screen things that we think of like the 40s or something that people would do. What would they do, right? They'd listen to the radio and move their bodies. They would create things with their hands. So kind of just re-exploring like what kinds of things the kids really like to do. And sometimes what you have to do is ratchet back one day at a time. So I have several clients who establish that 1 day a week is no screen time in terms of leisure time. And they spend the whole day with no screens, and then they all together watch a movie at the end. So it's like they do get screen time, but it's together. It's like a family day. And what they found is that when you give the kids that sort of boundary of, you can't pick up your screen, you got to figure something else out, they rediscover the things they love. And this would be a good time to kind of circle back to that whole like anchoring in activity, co-working idea of dusting off old board games, busting out those watercolor pencils again and playing around, like maybe getting some new paper for it, looking up at crafts and for very low cost, I know like craft stores are open and you can do even curbside at a lot, like Joann's. Like I just led this retreat where we had yarn and we learned like just having model magic and having yarn around, which is pretty low cost. Kids just like start to use their imagination more and get more into it. Now, teenagers, getting them social and getting them working towards a cause is also really helpful, like getting them to volunteer, whether it's just doing phone banking for a food bank or something that really helps them feel like they're giving back to their community that gets them off the screen. That's really helpful. Or helping them organize social distance dates, where they get to actually hang out with their friends in some creative way. I saw a bunch of teenagers the other day at a park sitting in the middle of hula hoops. So they each had a hula hoop, which kind of established the 6-foot distance. And they would sit inside of it, and then they had their little hangout, and then they also hooped, and they sat back down and sat on their hula hoops. So there's ways to move the kids towards less boredom. Hopefully that gave you some ideas. All right, that's it for our Ask Me Anything edition, August edition. Keep asking questions. Ask me follow-up questions. This is not the only way that we can connect. I also happen to have 3 spots tomorrow for parent strategy sessions. So if there's something that I shared here that you want to follow up on, please, please, please consider filling out this form. It's a parent quiz. And in this parent quiz anyway, you'll be, and I'm putting the link in the video. Oh, it's actually not letting me do that. That's interesting. So I'll have to put it in the post itself. Let's see if it'll let me do that. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is head over to this quiz, because the quiz really helps us clarify which of the 7 pillars are we strong in and which of the 7 pillars needs attention. And it helps us to just sort of self-assess where you could use some mentorship and what strengths you can build off of. And there's an opportunity there to also sign up for a session with me. It's a complimentary session build off of, where we will sit down and go over your quiz results and get you some clarity about how to bring those, how to boost those pillars that are maybe on the lower end. So for example, you might find that your positive relationships and conflict resolution pillars are really strong, but your emotional mastery, motivation mastery, and boundaries pillars are really low. Then we'll get together and we'll map out several things you can do over the next 3, 6, 12 months that can help you to boost those pillars in your household, so that you can have, really clear, healthy boundaries that the kids are on board, and get the kids on board with it. You can have more tools to motivate your kids besides using rewards and punishments. You can have a plan in place for when your kids lose their cool and they have a meltdown tantrum or get into a big fight with you, right? And how you emotionally can stay calm. So what to say and do, right? So those are things that I do with parents. Like I give them these tools and strategies. And I have, like I was mentioning, I have one spot opening up in my private practice next month. And then I also right now, and I'll show you, it's really cute. This is my these are my clients, and you can't see their names. That's okay. That's good. And right now I have 2 parents who are thinking of joining my year-long program, and I have 1 spot open. That could be yours. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm kind of, sometimes people are brought together at just the right time for just the right reason. It happened in January. I had 3 spots open and 3 families just found me and jumped into my program, and we've had a tremendous time of growth and learning. So if that's you, we'll find out. We'll find out. So when you apply for the strategy session, one of the things we will also do is see if it's a good fit for you to join this cohort. If it's not, no problem, no obligation, okay? Just a way for us to get to know each other and explore that, and for me to give you several strategies you can take and run with, whether or not that we end up working together. It's my gift to you, okay? So I'll go ahead and put that quiz and strategy session application in the video text up at top, and you'll be able to find it there. Good luck to you. So much love to you. I believe in you. Just by the fact that you came into the Raising Our Resilience world, asking the right questions, bringing up these concerns, you're clearly a big-hearted parent who really wants to do right by your kids and wants to learn tools and strategies for resilience and for all the years ahead. And for that, I admire you, and my love is, I feel you in my heart, and with love, I just want to pass that along, and let me know what you need. I'd love to do some follow-up in the comments. So I'll talk to you soon. Otherwise, we are heading into a new series on Mondays at 2 p.m. where I'll be addressing specific top concerns about virtual learning in the fall, since that's what the season we're heading into. All right, y'all. Lots of love to you. Bye.